Hi, everyone, and welcome to Studio Jake. I, of course, am your host, Jacob Airy. Thank you for joining me today. I talk about all kinds of things here on Studio Jake, but primarily pop culture stuff like movies, TV, anime, animation, books, novels, comic books. I love discussing these topics, sometimes music, but not very often. Also, check out my sister channel, Studio Jake Faith, where I do a weekly discussion about faith or just read some scripture. It depends on how it's going that day. But I wanted to talk about something that's very near and dear to my heart. So, one of my favorite authors of all time is C.S. Lewis. The very first book I read about him, or read that was by him, was the Screw Tape Letters, and it's this demon writing to his nephew demon about how best to tempt a person. It's a fantastic story. I highly recommend it. And from there, I read things like The Great Divorce. I read his space trilogy, which is behind me on my bookshelf. I did a video about them, again on my faith channel, Studio Jake Faith. Highly recommend checking out those. But C.S. Lewis is perhaps most known for his children's allegorical series, The Chronicles of Narnia, which of course started off with, not chronologically, but just publishing-wise, it started off with The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which is about these four siblings who they discover a wardrobe in the mansion they're staying at during the bombing of London. They're kind of hiding out there with this professor, and they stumble into this world, and it's filled with wonder and magic, and it's being controlled by a white witch who it has taken the land of Narnia, as it is called, from its true ruler, Aslan, who is a talking lion, is very majestic. And in fact, it even describes him as terrible, but not in the sense that, he's so terrible, in the sense that his presence almost terrifies you because he's so strong and mighty. Well, as you know, we got a trilogy of movies based on these books. We got The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We got Prince Caspian, and we got The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Now, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, it was a little hard for them to translate it because it's more an episodic book, as opposed to being one long narrative like Prince Caspian and The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The Voyage of the Dawn Treader is compartmentalized. It's kind of sort of a bunch of mini sagas that the children go on with their cousin, Eustace, I think is his name. And Eustace ends up turning into a dragon. All kinds of crazy stuff happens. But they did their best. I thought it was good. A lot of people didn't care for it. I thought it was fine. I would watch it again. Well, Netflix apparently has got the film rights to Narnia away from Walden Media, who produced the first three films. And it was announced, because it has been in development limbo forever, that they have tapped Greta Gerwig to do the first story. Now, I'm hesitant a little bit about this because Netflix was Amazon's Rings of Power before Amazon's Rings of Power. We saw this with Cowboy Bebop, with Welcome to Raccoon City, and then other franchise adaptions that they have tried to do. I'm pretty sure One Piece fans are in for a world of disappointment. We see this with The Witcher, where it had like a really good first season and then it kind of fell off. We've seen this with Enola Holmes. Netflix just has a problem adapting existing properties, especially if it's a video game or something, or especially in anime. And now, I am not familiar with Greta Gerwig's work. Jester Bell, who you should go check out her YouTube channel, she posted on Twitter that she likes Greta Gerwig. I have no reason to disbelieve her. Like I said, I've never seen her films, so I can't judge her as a director, and I'm not going to. She could be fantastic for all I know. But I'm not really concerned necessarily with Greta Gerwig adapting the Chronicles of Narnia. I am concerned with Netflix doing it, even with such a big name as Greta Gerwig attached to it. And here's why. For one thing, the Chronicles of Narnia is supposed to be a Christian allegory. It is Christian fiction in the highest form. It really is comparable with the Lord of the Rings, or with Frank Peretti's works. It's Pilgrim's Progress by John Bunyan, which I have behind me as well. You know, it's that level of I would even argue beyond some stuff. Now, C.S. Lewis obviously has books that are more adult oriented. Like I said, Chronicles of Narnia is written for children. But I am concerned because whenever a secular artist takes over a Christian project, they tend to want to downplay the faith aspect of it. And now, the original Chronicles of Narnia didn't. They kept all the allegories, all the symbolism. They didn't directly address Christianity, but of course the novels don't really. So, I could kind of see where there was a little bit of a disconnect. Now, as for and also Peter Jackson with Lord of the Rings, he kept with his trilogy, and even with the Hobbit trilogy, I would argue, he maintained what Tolkien was trying to say. Now, I am not a huge fan of the Hobbit trilogy. I did like the first one. I thought it was good. I could see how the Hobbit could be divided into 2 films, not elongated to 3. But I actually liked the first Hobbit movie. Now I really like them after Rings of Power. And see what Amazon Studios did with Rings of Power is they removed everything that made Tolkien's books timeless. And I talk about that. I have a whole playlist of me reacting to the episodes of Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. So definitely check that out as well. I go through all the episodes and explain why they're not Tolkien, how they're breaking the canon, how the characters don't match up with their book counterparts, the whole shebang. It's a lot of fun. And I'm worried that I'm going to be doing that again with Chronicles of Narnia. Now, one of the things it's been long enough now where you could do The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. The problem is the ones by Walden Media, it was actually the second time both those 3 particular titles had been adapted. So the BBC had done some TV movies, and they did The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and then they combined Prince Caspian and The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which makes sense. Both those books are short, so you could combine them into one film potentially. But it was. But then Walden Media immediately did those 3 titles. Now, it makes sense because The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the most well-known and, besides The Horse and His Boy, has the most satisfying ending. All the other books, sort of, except for the last one, which is called, creatively enough, The Final Battle, all of them except for those don't really have, sort of a finite ending. It kind of ends where it leaves it open for another adventure. So here's what I would do if I was Netflix. If someone sends this to Netflix, fantastic. What I would do is have Greta Gerwig. Now, they may have already have these movies planned out, and as of the writing, I got all my information from MovieWeb. They've said some of the titles they want to do. I think they said The Silver Chair was one of them. But what I would do is I would do The Horse and His Boy first. Why is that? Because The Horse and His Boy is about a kid who's from a kingdom, I believe, north of Narnia. I could be wrong about that, but it's he discovers that the man who he thought was his father is in fact not, and that this guy is going to sell him into slavery. Well, then he also discovers that his father's horse is in fact a Narnian. So it's not just a plain horse, it's an actual horse from Narnia. So the horse says, hey, let's use this opportunity to flee. And along the way, they run into the siblings who are kings and queens of Narnia. This book takes place before they return to the real world. So they call it the Golden Age of Narnia in the books. He is trying to get in touch with them, basically. Has a really great twist ending that you don't see coming. Fantastical. But what I would say is I would start out with that book, because then you could kind of world build from it. While it does leave it open for another adventure, it does have a more finite ending, and I think I said it with my exceptions earlier. It does have a good conclusion. It takes place during a great place in the stories, one that wasn't explored by the other books. So if I was Netflix, I would start with that book just to test the waters, because it's also not it's not a title that you typically associate. Like most people can spout off The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Prince Caspian, maybe even The Silver Chair, but The Horse and His Boy, is one that people would go, why would they do that? But then when they would see it, it would be really good, because it's a good story. Or they could do The Magician's Nephew, which serves as sort of a prequel to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It explains how the White Witch got to Narnia, who brought her there, how she became evil, why she became evil. It really explores her motivation. And I know Hollywood is all into exploring why female villains are the way they are, so that would be a good one that they could do. So highly recommend that they either do The Horse and His Boy or The Magician's Nephew, and that way, because they have kind of a standalone story, it would make sense, and that way they could test the waters and test the fans' reactions, but they're not going to do it. These places all have hubris. Netflix shouldn't, from the amount of times they have failed, but they have this hubris. So I have no doubt we're going to see either The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, The Silver Chair, or something else. I hope they don't do some weird conglomeration where they try to combine the books. I just think that's dumb. Now, that can work, I guess. It did work with A Series of Unfortunate Events where they combined the first 3 books into one movie. But I just don't think with that movie they did like a good transition, so it made sense. But I just don't trust Netflix to be able to make the transitions where it's all connected and put together. I honestly think that if Netflix pursues this, it's going to be a lot of hubris, and they're going to find a whole lot of disappointed fans. And I would just like to point out, whenever this whole thing with Amazon Studios buying the rights to Lord of the Rings started, I went on my friend Jenna Ellis's show, and I said, C.S. Lewis is next. I guarantee you, C.S. Lewis is next. They're going after Tolkien because his stuff is, high fantasy. It's important. It's got a huge readership. And I said, they're going to go after C.S. Lewis. After C.S. Lewis, it's going to be Chesterton. They're going to find a way to corrupt Chesterton's works as well. I guarantee it. That's what Hollywood is doing. They're taking out all of these Christian cultural icons because they can, and because they don't want you to know that they are Christian. I'm actually surprised we haven't seen some secular form of Pilgrim's Progress yet. That has actually surprised me. That one would be a little harder to translate. I've seen Christian adaptations of Pilgrim's Progress. Most of them have been pretty terrible. There was an animated film that was pretty good. It was made for kids, so it was a little bit more kiddish, obviously. But I still thought it was good with what they were trying to do. It worked as the kids' movie. But I'm not surprised that they're going to do this with C.S. Lewis, that they've picked Greta Gerwig. I don't know why they didn't pick someone like Mel Gibson, who's a well-known Christian filmmaker. Of course, he's, because he's a Christian in Hollywood, whenever he fails, he's not allowed to get back up. But all these other people who have done way more terrible things are allowed to. But we'll see how this goes. I honestly have very low expectations. I'm still going to watch it. I'm going to give it a chance. I'm not going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Netflix has given me no reason to give them the benefit of the doubt, considering what they've done. And I mentioned this earlier, Cowboy Bebop, their really terrible dub of Comey Can't Communicate, and a whole variety of other stuff. Netflix just is not a trustworthy company when it comes to these adaptations, and I was right. C.S. Lewis was next, and like I said, I think Chesterton is going to quickly follow. We're going to have to wait and see, but I do believe that they're going to find some way to put some sort of politically correct crap in the story of Narnia, and that would definitely ruin it for millions of fans from all over the world, including the host of StudioJake. If you liked that video, please leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Give it a thumbs up. And I would be honored today if you would subscribe. No matter what platform you're watching on, please subscribe, hit that follow button, share it out all over the place, and check me out on some of my other socials. I've got links in the description below. Also, check out my website, StudioJakeMedia.com, and consider supporting this channel on StudioJakeMedia.locals.com. It really helps us smaller creators out. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you next time right here on Studio Jake.